You got another window up?
I do.
Okay.
I'm just refreshing as we speak.
So it's supposed to be showing live 9 seconds in. But
Nothing's showing up.
What?
Yeah, nothing on the old Praxis channel.
Oh.
I got us live on we're live on YouTube.
Oh, good.
Are we?
Yeah.
You got us. Ed's got us. We're good.
I see us.
Hey. Woohoo. All right. Thanks everybody for I don't know if anybody's here or not, but this is good. This is good. This is the first live performance. Can you tell? We're 23 minutes late. We've been logged on since 6:30, and you know, this is kind of the way it goes. But in all seriousness, and I'm trying not to laugh because it's just so stinking funny. This is what we ask our students to do all the time, isn't it? Like,
totally
get into new tech, put this on your computer, log on at this time. What do you mean you can't get in? What do you mean it's not working? Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then it's like, okay, well, I'm going to cut the rope to your lifeboat and let you float away, and I'm just going to continue on with my class. But amazing.
Yeah.
So hopefully this is going well on the YouTube side, and people are clicking in. I don't know, Chad, are you going on Twitter saying we're live now? I'm going to try.
I will do that right now. Phone. Yeah. I'll say we're live, and I'll put the link to the session right now.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. And
I guess we needed more than 2 plumbers and an electrician to go live.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess, right? But it's kind of one of those things where it's, you know, it's what am I trying to say? I'm trying to do 18 things at once here. But anyway, so today's session is about practitioners and philosophers, and that's us, right? So we have a philosophy of education. We have an approach to education that's significant and has probably been a game changer for us as we've entered into this thing called vocational education and training, TVET, as some would call it in the broader context of technical vocational education and training. So, Chad, why don't you tell us a little bit about why you got into teaching in the first place, and maybe a little bit of how.
Okay, so the reason why I got into teaching is it had always been kind of a dream of mine. Through the high school, I thought I wanted to be a high school teacher. And then, after that, so I kind of started pursuing that track. I went to college, and then I realized that I wasn't kind of ready for that. So I ended up kind of pursuing a lot of things. I did the typical find yourself in college route, where I took a lot of philosophy courses, a lot of English lit courses. I delved into the School of Divinity for a while. So I took all these different tracks, and I realized that I needed to pay off some student loans. To be honest, I had a huge amount of student loans to find myself, and wanted to take a year off to go ahead and pay those down a bit. And so what happened was I started a lawn care company with a friend, and then as all summers do, it came to an end, and so did the lawns that needed to be cut. So this friend of mine had a cousin whose dad owned an electrical firm, and they needed somebody to help out for a couple of weeks. So I ended up helping out for a couple of weeks. We always joke still that was the longest 2 weeks of all of our lives, because it ended up working into a 4-year apprenticeship. So I ended up doing an apprenticeship, and I fell in love with the trade. And it was funny because it was one of those things I never thought I would ever do. I always vowed I would never be a tradesperson, because my dad was an engineer and would always loan me out to all his contractor friends. So I hated working on the tools. Fell in love with the trades. Went up to Fort McMurray, fell in love with working with apprentices. Like, I really enjoyed that part of it, really enjoyed the mentorship, which sparked the teaching thing in me again. And so I was up in the oil sands and decided that I needed to get back down to the Lower Mainland, to the Vancouver area where I was from. I just had a son, and it was time to get closer to family. So I was looking for work, and the British Columbia Institute of Technology had an ad out looking for an electrical instructor. And I thought, there is no way I'm going to get this job, but I'll do the Hail Mary and throw it in there, because I always thought that teaching was one of those retirement jobs, right? And that's something that maybe I would do later on when I was towards the end of my career. But I applied and got a phone call the next day from the chief instructor, flew down from Fort McMurray, did the interview, did a couple interviews, and got the job. And then from there, as I started teaching, and it was one of those situations where, as with a lot of vocational instructors, out of industry on a Friday in front of a class on a Monday. So I started kind of learning just through the School of Hard Knocks and putting my feet to the fire. And then lucky for us at the school I taught at, they put us through a program called the PID, which is a Provincial Instructor's Diploma. And I started learning a lot about this term called pedagogy. So how people learn and theories of learning and all that. And I started falling in love with that and wanted to get into adult education in a deeper sense because I was already teaching vocational. And through all that, kind of fell in love with that, finished my PID up, started experimenting with different things that I'd learned through the PID. And I'm sure we'll talk about that later on too, especially in this afternoon session. I'll talk about that. Yeah. And then ended up pursuing my master's in learning and technology. And I'm just finishing up on that. So that's kind of the meandering trail of how I got here.
Okay. Ed, how about you? How'd you get into it?
Well, I think I kind of just fell into it in a way because I remember when I was in trade school myself, I had a few good teachers, really good teachers, and I thought to myself, my God, that would be a great job. I could do that. I could stand up there in front of the class. I love talking, and I'm very, I think I'm very sociable, and right, and anyway, so when I had, I don't know if it was how many years after, but I put a general application into the school, the college where I got my training at, and I just thought, I'll put it in. They're looking for general application. I won't get a call, and I don't know how many years later I got a call. All of a sudden, there it is. I see Durham College up on my call display. I'm like, why are they calling me? I've been gone for a long time. What do they want, right? Because I had forgotten about it. I had forgotten I hadn't even put it in. And then, sure enough, it was just near the end of the year, but before Christmas, they were looking for part-time instructors for the January start. And so I went in, and work was kind of slow at the time. So I was like, I'm gung ho for anything. I don't want to be on unemployment. I want to make some money. So, and apparently I put an application in. So I guess I'm going to give it a go, right? I always thought it was kind of cool. It doesn't look like a hard job, really. Too. It looks like a fun job, right? And so I
hard.
No, I went in for the interview, and sure enough, that the two things they were looking for were either a teacher to teach safety, which I was really big on, and I had taken a lot of courses, so I felt really confident. I'm like, oh yeah, I could teach that. I'm big on safety, and I've done. So I thought it would ease taking the job that they were offering to me. And the other thing what they were offering was plumbing trade calculations, so the math, right? And I was always good at math. Like in trade school, I had high 90s. I loved math, so I thought, okay, they're offering me. Then finally, they offered me a position. They said, you want to teach, whatever one you want to teach of the two. And I said, sure enough, I'll give it. I thought, I put the application in now. I said it was easy. Let's try it out and see how it goes, right? And
nice.
Lucky for me, before I started, there was that break over the holidays, and so just before the holidays started, they had the school was offering they do like what they call a jump start program, like a 2-day kind of crash course, especially for new part-time teachers, sure. like Chad said, right? Because you're one day you finish, next day you're starting as a teacher, right? So I did that over the weekend and moved on from there. So
nice. Yeah, I didn't think I would get a job teaching, and long story short, somebody said to me, "Oh, you should go apply at BCIT. They're looking for instructors." And I'm like, nah, I know the gig. I'd known a few people tried to get in, and they just got chewed up and spit out. And so one day, a couple weeks later, I'm driving by BCIT on my way home from a job site, and I'm like, I'll just stop in and talk to the chief instructor, because he and I sat on a committee together, and he convinced me to throw an application in. And literally 2 weeks later, I'm accepting an offer to come and teach for a contract term or a contract. It was like 6 weeks or 8 weeks. And the thing is that there was no promise. Like, this wasn't a full-time to full-time gig. Like, this is a full-time working for an established contractor going into a contract going, well, if it doesn't work out in 8 weeks, I guess I'm going back to the field. Right. And so it's one of those things where you kind of hang your coveralls up in the coat closet near the door, and you're like, I may need these in a couple months, so I'm not going to throw them out just yet. And that became the running joke for almost a year, where it's like, so should I break out my Carhartts again, or what's going on with my contract? Am I going to get renewed? And so I got renewed, a couple 3-month contracts, and then near the end of the year, somebody had retired, and and then and actually 2 people retired at pretty much the same time. So got in, and that was 11 and a half, 12 years ago. So yeah, it's fun. Best gig ever.
Yeah.
And I'm still a little nervous talking to people about the benefits of what we get to do, because not a lot of people get to do what we get to do, and it's a privilege and an honor. So that's how we fell into it. Tell me a little bit about your educational philosophy, Ched. Where did you start from? Where are you now? And maybe 1 or 2 things that have been a significant impact on that growth.
For where I started from teaching, as I always, because I had such a vast background, because I'd gone to community college, I'd gone to university, I'd gone to trade school, I experienced a broad range of different teaching styles. And I always saw certain styles that were very typical of the stand up and talk for 3 hours in front of a class type of thing, not really engaging, just kind of spewing information. I thought, I never want to do that. That's not my jam. I want to be more interactive. So I always kind of, when I went into it, not knowing anything about pedagogy or the practice of teaching, I just knew that I wanted to engage with my students. So I wanted to build, it was an opportunity to build relationships. So that's kind of been the guiding principle of everything. And so is how to make these things, how to make education more engaging for our students, realizing that it's important for our students to learn the theory behind all this, but there's also, it's like the classroom is also a time to teach our students how to be better people as well.
Yeah.
And if my students can leave my classroom better than when they showed up, and I know that I leave my classroom better for having these relationships with them, if that could be my guiding principle, well, then that kind of is the lens that I look through with everything. So when I'm trying to get my learning outcomes built for my class, like, yes, it's important that my students understand parallel circuits, but it's more important that they learn how to troubleshoot and collaborate. So I really focus a lot on group work and kind of throw little curveballs at them that they can use in their group work to kind of work together and figure out how that's going to work. Because yes, A, they learn how to do a parallel circuit, but B, they also learn how to work within that group, which is what it's going to be like when they're in industry, right? And that's something that has really kind of guided me, is it's got to be about the student first, which I know I'm preaching to the choir when I talk to you two, as well as a lot of people who are watching this, but it's got to be student-centered learning. And so we need to focus on that. It's not about me at all. I'm not the focal point. And I think that's one thing I really didn't like about some of the instruction I received all through the years of my post-secondary education. There was a lot of the instructor show. So flipping that and turning it into, it's all about the show is on the students. They're the hero of this story, not me. So yeah.
Right. Awesome. Ed, same question.
Yeah, I kind of fell into, when I first started, it was kind of like, it was about me. I don't want to say it was, but it was about me. I wanted to present an education for the students and also not fall on my face, right? I didn't want to be that teacher that I knew that everybody always talked about. Look at that guy. You can't even teach. Like, we're not getting anything out. We could stay home and read a textbook. We could go online and find this out. I wanted to make sure that I want to make sure that they had more. So, I mean, but at the same time, I realized that, I try to focus on role models that I knew. And the role models that I knew were always kind of like that student focused, right? They wanted to make sure that, like Chad mentioned, you got the full kind of experience, right? And so I knew then early on, I don't have all the skills yet, but I'm gonna pick away at the little skills along the way. I'm gonna take little. So that's where my pedagogy it's changed, where it really is that student focused, and I want them to get the most out of it, and trying to look at something new. I'm always looking to try and change things up a bit, right? Just to see if am I really maximizing, the potential and trying to get them the most out of them, right? And to have them the most well-rounded when they leave, right? To enter the field. So, and it's definitely changed a lot more since the online world. So, I mean, I think I think I was empathetic before, but I think I'm way more empathetic now than I was before. So, it's focused on the student, and it's also being more empathetic because of the world we live in, right? So, and trying to be open to that as well.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. When I first started, it was all about me. I thought I was the guy to come and bring all this stuff and distribute it to the students. Although I did have a sense of, why I was there. It wasn't just for me. And I'll be honest, like at the beginning, it's a good gig, right? You're out of the field. You're not doing all the physical labor stuff. And You don't have to worry about working overtime, showing up early and all this. Like, it's there. It's 7:30 to 2 for us. And there's a set curriculum, and you have a number of students for a period of time, and then you roll it over and you keep going. I soon realized, though, that it was a massive career change. It wasn't just a shift. It was a career change. And then I did the PID, and for a lot of different circumstances, I didn't have the 2 years to get it done in. I had like 8 months to get it done. And so I just cranked it out in 8 months and got it done. And learned a lot. We didn't talk a lot about pedagogy that I remember. I'd have to go, maybe because we did it so fast, I didn't really land on it too quickly. But I don't remember us talking a lot about pedagogy. We talked a lot about the practical stuff, like how do you put a lesson plan together? How do you do a presentation? How do you make sure that your content is up to speed and all that other stuff? But we didn't really talk a lot about pedagogy. Like, I don't remember people using that word, and I know I would remember that word because it wasn't a common word in that environment that I was in, the new one. And I realized that it was this shift from industry to education is a massive career change. And yes, they hired me as a subject matter expert. Yes, they brought me in to teach 16 apprentices. I get all that. And even foundation students that have no experience. I get all that. That part wasn't necessarily different than the field, because I mean, I ran crews, I had apprentices and all that other stuff. So teaching them what I knew wasn't different. That just the setting was. What was really different for me was the system. So working with other subject matter experts, and most, if not all of them, were hired because they were good at what they do and they knew it, right? And now becoming a small fish in a big pond again was that was life-changing. And then evolving into this role in education in our department, there's a lot of people who pick a specialty when it comes to what we do. So some people go into water and specifically water distribution and protection. And then others go into gas fitting, and some others go into hydronic heating. And everything was getting locked up, and I didn't really know which direction to go in. So I chose hydronic heating at first and loved it, still do, and did a lot of it commercially out in the field. And so I understood it all, and it was natural. Just still didn't click. And so I made this. I still remember the day and the decision that I made. I'm going to go into an education perspective, not a practical perspective. That may sound weird because education is practical, but I decided, because no one in our department was educationally focused. They were all focused on a specific discipline within a discipline. And then when I made that switch, it was like, the doors opened and the lights came on, and everything began to click. And that was probably about 7 years ago. And it's been an awesome trajectory so far. And so when we talk about education and TVET, we can't avoid the gap that exists between academia and vocational education. So I wonder, from your perspective, what can we do on the vocational side to help bridge that gap
between academics and vocational?
Yeah,
I think in order to bridge that gap is we need to change our language. And we've had this discussion many times where we talk about trades training, and I'm wanting to push back on that now. It's not trades training, it's trades education. We're not just training them to use tools and training them to build things. We're training them to be better people. We're educating them. So that means I also need to look at myself not as a trainer, but as an educator. I also need to shift, and we need to shift that language from subject matter expert, which I was a great electrician, but now I'm an instructor or an educator. So that, to me, that's the thing that I need to shift is these. To me, like, words mean so much, and when we start using them in different contexts, it opens things up. So let's get rid of the term training. Let's get rid of those terms trainers, and then let's start using that term education. And there shouldn't be this big divide between TVET and academics, because we're all educators, and we should. There's stuff that we can do as trades educators that needs that academics could learn from, and there's a whole lot of stuff that we as TVET educators can learn from academics. So we need to stop siloing, right? And it's like that joke that I kind of mentioned a few times in Twitter, like when we had the podcast, or we had a plumber, a hairdresser, and an electrician walk into a bar. We've got the silo of this, and this, but we're all educators, right? That's why we're all good friends. That's why we all have these great discussions. So, yeah.
Yeah, good point. Ed?
Yeah, and I think that some institutions like the where I work, we're doing programs together a lot more. Like the training is getting done together, right? So when I became full time through my institution, we have to do almost, I call it like a teacher's program, and it's bringing everybody together. So whether you teach photography, nursing, HR, history, any kind of trades, you're coming together in the room, and I think the first time the light bulb came on me for I'm an educator was the first time that one of my students said, "Professor Ed," and I went, "Professor? I am a professor. I am an educator." And I remember telling the student, "By the way, you're going to do well this year, but thanks for calling me professor." But but it kind of got a little bit exploded there. But I remember when I was in the class with my other colleagues, and we were talking about different things that we had done. And a lot of these people had been teaching a lot longer than I had part time, but I was throwing ideas out, like things I had done in my class. They're like, "Wow, you do that in your class? That's amazing!" Or, "We do that too. I didn't know that you guys could do that in trades." I said, "Well, it's education. We're all doing the same thing. You're teaching this person, I'm teaching this person to do this, and we're all educators, right?" So, I agree with Chad. I'm a big person on definitions and words and terminology. Like in Ontario, they still say trade agent. So the college is a trade agent for the ministry for whatever trade it is. And I hate
so matrixy.
I hate it because I hate that word trainer, because I think to myself, back before I got into plumbing, when I first started working, I did a little quick gig as a trainer, right? And it really was a trainer. It was very specific, something short. But here we're educating. We're trying to take someone into the future, into a career, and like Chad had mentioned before, developing the whole outside, the whole themselves, right? So I definitely think that's a big key, the terminology, and also it's also trying to get the mindset of other fellow teachers who are in the skilled trades to get out of that vocation, because some of them are stuck in that mindset too, right? So it's not about changing the people on the academic side, it's about also changing the people on the vocational side, that no, we're all one, we're all actually doing the same thing.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because there's a colleague I have who says that he calls himself an educator, and he is, and he would often pipe up when this conversation come up, or do we do education or do we train? And his comment always was, "I train my dog, I educate my students." And early on in my career, I'm like, what are you talking about? You train your dog and educate students? No. We're into training. Like, we get them into labs, and we get their hands dirty, and we build stuff, and we take stuff down, we test it. And like, it's a living lab. Right. And then as I began to progress into my career, I actually have to give the guy credit, because I'm like, you're spot on. Like, we are educators. We do some training? Yes. Do we do some hands-on skills building? Yes. Maybe not so much in apprenticeship as we get higher up into the levels, for sure. But especially at the foundation level or entry level trades, where these students come in, they have most of them have no experience with tools. Some of them don't even know how to use a tape measure. And now you're getting into construction trades, which is, you live and die by your tape measure, right? Like, all your biggest debates in the lunch shack are who has the best tape measure and how long has it lasted, right? But it's interesting. And so Lori has a good question, and she mentions that this is so common, right? Identifying ourselves based on our area of expertise. Like, I'm a plumber, I'm an electrician. And sometimes I even catch myself doing this and wonder, should I be doing it? And because I often throw in the little peppering of, well, I teach in the School of Business too. I teach a couple business classes, and trying to create that bridge. But I'm wondering if you guys have any thoughts on how we can support the shift in the mindset, other than what you've already mentioned, which are good things?
For me, I think I want to pay props to Ed on this is building communities of practice, and by having these kind of conversations, right? I just threw something in the chat there, like Ed's done a great job of, like, this was his brainchild, this session today, right? And this, like, getting us all together, realizing that we're not alone in this, and having these conversations. Like, Tim, you and I have been talking for years about this, and for a long time, with you and I sitting in a Starbucks just ranting about it, and then suddenly, and it was rants, and then suddenly we met Sally, and suddenly our personal learning network just grew, and now we're friends with Ed, and like you start seeing all these people, Lori and Lucy, like all these people that we're talking to and interacting with. We're not alone, people in this TVET. We're not alone thinking that we're educators, and just that empowers me to know that I just want to shout it out from the mountaintops more now, because I know that I got people in my corner that realize that that we're all educators. We're not just trainers.
Yeah. Ed?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much the same thing. I mean, we even if we're getting to a bigger group, it's still, we have those little conversations with people, our colleagues at work, right? And I mean, sometimes those are the best conversations, the water cooler conversations, or between offices talking about stuff, right? And I think that's where you can start to change the mindset. I mean, my biggest thing too was just to kind of announce myself. I am a professor. I'm an educator.
Yeah,
and then it's well, what do you teach? Well, I teach plumbing. And then you kind of give, like you said, that kind of weird look. I said, well, you know what? There's a lot more to plumbing than you think. It's just I'm not teaching plumbing. I'm teaching theory. I got mathematics and stuff behind it. And to kind of show the stuff that's behind it will start to change the people who are not in that area, as well as the people who are in vocational type training. And I shouldn't even say that. Now I'm going to curse myself for even using that word. We're educators, right? And we have educators that happen to teach a skilled trade, right? And just have those and realize, what these careers involve and how much training is involved. I mean, I think sometimes people don't realize what it takes to be in a skilled trade, right? So, and so just to open their mind to that and realize, oh, there's a lot that goes on. It's people don't just have to fall out of high school and become a plumber or become an electrician. There's stuff behind that makes them become who they are, right? And I think that will open a lot more eyes to the fact that, okay, these people are educators, right? So
yeah, that's a really good point. And I often caught myself early on in my career. People would say, "Oh yeah, so what do you teach?" And it's kind of like, you'd be like, "Well, I teach plumbing and pipe fitting and steam fitting and gas fitting," and they just kind of look at you and go, "What? You do what? I didn't know they taught that." And I'm like, "Well, where do you think people learn how to do this stuff?" And then you start running into, well, because I'm sure you guys face this too in high school. Well, if you don't think you're a good fit for university, there's always the trades.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we need to stop saying that. Trades is not a consolation prize, right? And it became clear to me as I started getting into higher education and started integrating with more of those who work in the high school system. Just the physical location of the trades departments in high schools compared to some of the STEM classes that go on. And I know that some of it's logistics, and you don't want to place an 1,800-pound machine on the third floor in a school because it might fall through the floors. I get that. But even the fact that all the trades at my high school were down in the basement, right? And all the math and the science and physics and chemistry, they were all on the third floor. Like, and all the humanities are on the second floor. Like, if you really wanted to make a go in life, you needed to be on that third floor, because that's where all the successful people were going to be. And, all the grungy, students who quote unquote weren't going to make it ended up down in the trades level. And I got to tell you, out in the trades, yeah, sure, there are some people who pick trades because they knew university wasn't going to be a track for them. But more often than not, I worked with a lot of tradespeople who are super smart, and some of the best ones that I learned from were in that category. And that sparks me probably more than anything, is people go, well, you can always go in the trades. It's like, hold on, time out. And I'd write out a simple little math formula. And Chad, you could probably do these till your cows come home, right? But write out a simple little math formula from gas fitting, and somebody said, well, what's that? And it's like, oh, well, I use that formula to make sure I don't blow up your house. Right? And they're like, what? And it's just to prove that, not every tradesperson's dumb. I'll just say it out loud on live on YouTube. There we go. Not every tradesperson's dumb. And because I know that in the white collar world, there are some people who aren't very smart either. And oftentimes I say this too, that there really isn't a lot of difference between the white collar world and the blue collar world. It's just the white collar world, they're able to hide it easier. The blue collar world, for some reason, for one reason or another, we love to wear that on our sleeve. We're not afraid to say sometimes what we're thinking, and sometimes that gets us into a lot of trouble. But rubbing shoulders, that's what I found out. Chad, you were going to say something.
I always have something to say. I can't remember what I was going to say though.
I was going to say something that at my school we do a little survey when the first year apprentices come in for the first time for in-school training. In-school training. I just hit the training again. I start biting my tongue.
We're going to beat that out of you before we get the next session.
We do like a little survey, like about what they've learned so far. They've been in the field for roughly about a year, so most of them have probably been chasing coffees and whatnot. But it's interesting. We have an education piece questions, and every year it just keeps growing. That I'm more and more surprised how much different backgrounds people have. People have changed careers. Like the education that some of my new apprentices have is amazing. I'm like, my God, I think they have more education than I do, right? I'm like, and the first time I saw it, I started seeing it. I thought to myself, like, what are you doing here? Even as an educator, I said, what are you doing here, right? And he goes, no, I really enjoy this, and I understand how valuable this is, how good of a career it is. Yep. And I also appreciate once they're done, they also say, or even before they begin, I appreciate how much education is behind this, that the average Joe, even myself, would probably, when I got my degree or my diploma, would not appreciate, but I do appreciate now, right? So, and I know that even now, just before I went into teaching, I was surrounded by guys that had like so much education. Yeah, they were in their Carhartts, they were muddy and dirty and stuff, but you wouldn't believe how educated you would. The normal assumption, would be, oh, that's just some, there's some guy who couldn't make it through, college, right? He's off to be a tradesperson. So.
Yeah,
I agree. I see it more and more. Every foundation course I teach, like entry-level trades training, I have like people that have their BScs. I've got 2 guys that have their bachelors in my course right now. So yes, I get some that are straight out of high school, but I'm always seeing the ones that have gone through that and then decided that they didn't want to work in an office or they couldn't find an office job, right?
Yeah.
So it's changing, that the whole demographic is changing. And I love the perspective, absolutely love the perspective that they bring to the class as well, because they bring a seriousness to it. To them, it's not high school, it's post-secondary education. And they help me as an instructor, as an educator, with the students that think it's just going to be another shop class from high school.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I've noticed that specifically in the night school classes that I've taught in the trades departments, where, like Ed, you make a really good point. Like I've had people from countries like Russia and India, China, who have come in with like mechanical engineering backgrounds, right? Like they've got those certifications and qualifications in their home country. They come to Canada, they find out that they got to go through, multiple years of upgrades just to be eligible to write the exam. And I could rant on and on about the system, how it lies to them to get them in, and then once they're in here, it traps them. But I've got these people in my class, and I'm like, dude, you've been to school almost as long as I've been teaching. and here I am going into the basics of electricals, right? And it's like, you're probably more apt to teach this than me, but anyway, let's hold on and we'll do this, right? But and yeah, bringing a whole different perspective to the classroom is phenomenal. So in the last few minutes that's remaining, for those that are tuning in now, thank you for tuning in, taking the time, and those who are going to listen to us later. To wrap it up with practitioners and philosophers, if we had a room full of educators right now, and you had 1 minute to say something to encourage them / challenge them, Chad, what would you say?
Get out there and figure out where your community of practice is. And by that, I mean, find fellow trades instructors that are going to work with you, and don't silo yourself. I've learned so much in my relationship with like Tim and Ed. There's things that we can share amongst each other, practices, that sort of thing. So I know I'm not trying to say that social media is the answer, but get into Twitter and start expanding your personal network there. Get into LinkedIn. expand your personal network there. You would be amazed at the connections you make, the friendships and the relationships I've formed from those two social media sources, using them not just to tweet pictures of my dog, but to actually talk about the stuff that I'm wrestling with, right? So get a personal learning network going. It's life-changing.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Ed, same question.
Yeah, I would agree with Chad, but also I would say don't be afraid to jump into something like a little PD session that the college might be offering, or you see somewhere online. Jump in and I mean I want to do bigger things and bigger degrees and stuff, but don't be afraid. Take that little small step and just try something out new. And who knows, you might learn that one little bit of nugget that you can move forward in your practice, right? So. And as an educator, so don't be afraid to jump in and just try something. Try a little session. What's an hour out of your day or 2 hours of your day? I mean, we all waste a lot more than that. So,
yeah, exactly. All right, awesome. Well, we're coming up to the time we want to honor that, and thanks again for those of you who've tuned in. Thanks to you who are listening, watching at a later time. We have 2 more sessions today. So Pacific Daylight Standard Time. That's not right. Pacific Daylight Time. Been a rough morning. What can I say? My coffee cup is not quite big enough. At 9:00, we have a student experience session. And then at 11:00, we have tools and tech. And I know that one is going to be knocked out of the park because it's going to be awesome. Thanks, Ed, for being the impetus catalyst for putting this together. And good on you for that. It's an honor to be here with you guys. And anyway, we'll take care and we'll sign off, and we'll catch you at 9:00 our time.
You betcha. See you in an hour.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.